The gunshot echoed through the dusty streets of Redemption Creek, Arizona Territory, 1877, sending Willow Hartford stumbling backward into the mud. It wasn't the bullet that had knocked her down, it had merely grazed her arm, but rather the shock of finding herself, once again, at the wrong end of a gun. Her crime? Daring to speak her mind to a man who believed women should be seen and not heard. That'll teach you to run your mouth, you crazy witch. The drunken miner holstered his pistol and spat in her direction before staggering back into the saloon. Blood trickled down Willow's sleeve as she pushed herself to her feet, ignoring the stares from townsfolk who'd witnessed the altercation but done nothing to intervene. At 26, she was used to the whispers that followed her through town, the unmarried troublemaker, the woman with opinions too strong and a temper too quick, the schoolteacher they'd run out of town after she'd taught the girls mathematics alongside the boys. "Are you hurt, Miss Hartford?" Mrs. Simmons called from the safety of her general store doorway, concern in her voice but caution in her stance. "Nothing that won't heal," Willow replied, pressing a handkerchief to her wound. She straightened her back and lifted her chin, refusing to show weakness despite the pain shooting through her arm. Mrs. Simmons shook her head. "You really ought to mind your place, dear. No man will ever take a woman like you, always causing a stir, always fighting back. It's not natural." Willow swallowed the retort that rose to her lips. She'd heard it all before. Too educated, too independent, too stubborn, too much. As she limped toward her small cabin at the edge of town, the whispers followed her like shadows. That Hartford woman. Always trouble. No husband at her age. No decent man would have her. Inside her modest home, Willow cleaned and bandaged her wound, gritting her teeth against the sting of alcohol on raw flesh. The mirror reflected a woman with dirt-smudged cheeks, loose auburn hair falling from its pins, and eyes greener than summer sage, eyes now bright with unshed tears she refused to let fall. She wasn't always this way. Once, she'd been the obedient daughter of a Boston banker, destined for a respectable marriage. But after her parents died of influenza, leaving her with nothing but debts, she'd sold everything to travel west and start anew. She'd arrived in Redemption Creek 3 years ago, armed with education and determination, only to find that the West wasn't any more welcoming of a woman with a mind of her own than Boston had been. The next morning dawned hot and dusty. Willow's arm throbbed as she gathered eggs from her small hen house. She needed supplies, which meant braving town again. She dressed in her plainest skirt and shirtwaist, attempting to draw as little attention as possible, though she knew it was futile. In Redemption Creek, she was already marked. The general store was busier than usual. Willow kept her head down as she gathered flour, coffee, and sugar. "Did you hear?" Mrs. Peterson whispered loudly to Mrs. Jenkins near the fabric bolts. "Blake Callahan's back in town." "The rancher from Thunder Ridge?" Mrs. Jenkins asked. "I thought he'd gone back east." "Returned yesterday. They say he's looking to expand his operation. Bought the old Wilson property." Willow paid them no mind. Blake Callahan was just another name in a town full of men who would look at her with either disdain or inappropriate interest. She approached the counter where Mr. Simmons tallied her purchases. "That'll be 87 cents, Miss Hartford," he said stiffly. As Willow counted out coins from her dwindling savings, the store's bell jangled. The sudden hush made her turn. A man ducked through the doorway, his broad shoulders nearly filling the frame. Dust covered his dark denim pants and blue shirt, and a weathered Stetson shaded eyes the color of a storm-dark sky. He removed his hat as he entered, revealing thick black hair that curled slightly at his collar. "Morning, folks," he said, his deep voice carrying an authority that commanded attention without effort. "Mr. Callahan." Mr. Simmons practically leapt from behind the counter. "Welcome back to Redemption Creek." So this was Blake Callahan. Willow turned back to her purchases, uninterested in another wealthy rancher who probably thought women belonged in the kitchen or bedroom and nowhere else. "Miss Hartford, Mr. Simmons said tersely, pushing her change across the counter and quickly turning his attention to the newcomer. Willow gathered her packages, wincing as the weight strained her injured arm. A small gasp escaped her lips as she adjusted her grip, drawing the attention of those nearby. "Need a hand with those, madam?" Callahan asked, already stepping toward her. "I can manage, thank you," she replied curtly, not meeting his eyes. Mrs. Peterson tittered behind her hand. Don't bother with that one, Mr. Callahan. Willow Hartford manages everything herself, don't you know? Won't take help from anyone, especially a man. Got shot yesterday for mouthing off to Jack Miller, someone added. Always causing trouble, that one. Heat rushed to Willow's cheeks. I didn't mouth off. I asked him to stop harassing Sally at the cafe. He was grabbing at her. That's not a woman's place to interfere, Mr. Simmons said dismissively. And whose place is it when no man steps up? Willow challenged, immediately regretting engaging but unable to stop herself. See what I mean? Mrs. Jenkins said to Callahan. No man will ever take a woman like her. The store fell silent. Willow felt the weight of every stare like physical pressure. She squared her shoulders and headed for the door, determined to escape with what little dignity she had left. I'll take her, a deep voice said from behind her. Willow froze mid-step, turning slowly to face Blake Callahan, who stood watching her with an unreadable expression. Pardon, she managed. A slow smile spread across his face, revealing a dimple in his right cheek. Your packages, madam. I'll take them to wherever you're headed. The townsfolk exchanged glances, some smirking, others frowning in disapproval. She lives at the edge of town, Mr. Callahan, Mrs. Peterson said. Not worth your trouble. Blake's gaze never left Willow's face. I'll take her packages twice over if it means lightening her load with that injured arm. His voice softened slightly. If you'll allow it, Miss Hartford. There was something in his eyes, not pity, which she would have rejected outright, but a simple offer of assistance without judgment. Willow hesitated, then reluctantly held out her heaviest package. Thank you, Mr. Callahan. He took not just the one package but all of them, balancing them easily in his strong arms. Lead the way. The walk through town felt endless. Willow could feel eyes watching from every window, whispers following their progress. Blake seemed unbothered, making casual conversation about the weather and changes in town since he'd been gone. How long were you away? Willow asked, more to fill the awkward silence than from genuine curiosity. 2 years. He adjusted the packages. My father passed, and I had business back east to settle. I'm sorry for your loss. He nodded in acknowledgement. I hear you're from the east as well. Willow glanced at him sharply. You've been asking about me, Mr. Callahan? Hard not to hear about you in a town this size. He replied with a slight smile. Especially when you make such an impression. She couldn't tell if he was mocking her. Not all impressions are favorable. Most worth making aren't. They reached her small cabin, and Willow opened the door, feeling suddenly self-conscious about her modest home. Blake set the packages on her table with care. Nice place. You've made it homey. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with volumes that had cost her dearly to transport west. Colorful quilts brightened the simple furniture, and dried wildflowers hung from the ceiling beams. Thank you for your assistance, she said formally, standing by the door in clear dismissal. Instead of leaving, Blake turned to face her. May I ask what really happened with Jack Miller? Willow stiffened. I told the truth in the store. He was pawing at Sally, the waitress. She's 16 and terrified of losing her job. I told him to leave her alone. And he shot you for that. He was drunk. The bullet just grazed me. She touched her bandaged arm unconsciously. Blake's expression darkened. Has the sheriff done anything about it? Willow laughed bitterly. Sheriff Daniels? He said I should learn to hold my tongue if I don't want trouble. That's not right. Few things are, Mr. Callahan, especially for a woman alone. She straightened her shoulders. But I manage. He studied her for a long moment. I don't doubt that, Miss Hartford. He retrieved his hat from where he'd set it on the table. I'm in need of a teacher. The abrupt change of subject startled her. Excuse me. For the children at Thunder Ridge Ranch. I've got 5 families working for me now, with 11 children between them. Too far for them to come to town for schooling. He twisted the brim of his hat in his hands. I understand you were a teacher before. The pain of her lost position still stung. I was dismissed. For teaching girls the same as boys, from what I hear. Willow's eyes narrowed. You have been asking about me. I make it a point to know the measure of people around me. He placed his hat back on his head. The position pays $30 a month, plus room and board at the ranch house. You'd have your own quarters, of course. The offer was unexpected and tempting. Willow's savings were dwindling, and work for an unmarried woman in Redemption Creek was scarce. Why me? She asked suspiciously. There must be other candidates more agreeable. I don't need agreeable, Miss Hartford. I need someone who can teach reading, writing, arithmetic, and history properly. Someone who won't teach my ranch hands' daughters that their only purpose is to cook and bear children. His eyes held her steadily. I need someone who stands up for what's right, even when it costs her. Willow's heart beat faster, but caution tempered her response. And the families at your ranch? Would they accept me as their children's teacher? They'll accept who I hire, he said simply, then softened his tone. But yes, I believe they would welcome you. Most are immigrants, Italian, Irish, Mexican. They know what it's like to be judged unfairly. The prospect of teaching again, of having meaningful work, was almost too good to resist. But Willow had learned the hard way that opportunities often came with hidden conditions. I'll consider your offer, Mr. Callahan. He nodded, seemingly satisfied. I'll return tomorrow for your answer. He moved toward the door, then paused. And Miss Hartford, if Jack Miller gives you any more trouble, you send word to me. With that, he was gone, leaving Willow staring at the closed door, wondering what had just happened and why the most prosperous rancher in the territory had seemingly taken an interest in the most notorious woman in Redemption Creek. Morning found Willow pacing her small cabin, her decision still unmade. Teaching again would be a dream realized, but moving to Thunder Ridge Ranch meant placing herself under Blake Callahan's authority. What if he proved no different from other men who thought they could control her? A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find not Blake, but a young Mexican woman with a kind face and a basket over her arm. Miss Hartford? I am Rosa Mendez. Her English was accented but clear. My husband works for Senor Callahan at Thunder Ridge. I bring you this. She offered the basket, which contained fresh bread, preserves, and a jar of honey. That's very kind, but unnecessary, Willow said, confused by the gesture. Rosa smiled. Senor Callahan said you might come teach our children. I wanted to meet you. She glanced down. My Elena, she is 9. Very smart. At our old home, the teacher would not let her learn numbers because she is a girl. Is this true you teach girls everything? Willow's resolve softened. Yes, Mrs. Mendez. I believe girls deserve the same education as boys. Rosa's face brightened. Then I hope you come. Elena, she wants to be a doctor someday. After Rosa left, Willow's decision became clearer. If she could make a difference in even one child's life, wasn't it worth the risk? When Blake arrived that afternoon, she was ready. I accept your offer, Mr. Callahan, with conditions. She stood tall despite her nervousness. I choose the curriculum. I teach all subjects to all children equally. And I answer to you regarding my teaching duties, but not regarding my personal conduct or opinions. Blake's expression remained neutral. Agreed, with one addition. While at the ranch, you'll respect the rules I've established for everyone's safety. The territory can be dangerous. It seemed reasonable enough. When would you like me to start? Tomorrow, if possible. I've brought a wagon for your belongings. Willow raised an eyebrow. You were quite confident of my acceptance. A smile tugged at his lips. Hopeful, not confident. I've learned not to presume anything about you, Miss Hartford. The following morning, Willow found herself bouncing along beside Blake in his wagon, her meager possessions packed in trunks behind them. The terrain grew more rugged as they left town, the desert landscape giving way to rolling hills dotted with mesquite and juniper. What made you come west, Mr. Callahan? She asked, breaking the comfortable silence that had settled between them. Freedom, he answered without hesitation. My father was a banker in Philadelphia. Expected me to follow in his footsteps, marry the right society girl, live in a fine house in the right neighborhood. He glanced at her. I wanted more sky. The simple answer resonated with Willow. I understand that sentiment. And you, Miss Hartford? What brought you to Redemption Creek? Necessity, initially. After my parents died, I had few options in Boston. She watched a hawk circling overhead. But I stayed because I thought I could build something here. A life of my own making. And have you? She considered the question. I'm still building. After another hour, they crested a hill, and Thunder Ridge Ranch spread before them, a sprawling property nestled against distant mountains. A large, 2-story ranch house dominated the center, surrounded by barns, corrals, and several smaller cabins scattered at respectful distances. It's beautiful, Willow breathed. Thank you. Pride warmed Blake's voice. My father thought I was throwing my life away when I bought this land 15 years ago. It was nothing but scrub and rock then. You've accomplished something remarkable. He guided the horses down the slope toward the main house. I had help. Good people who were willing to work hard for a fair wage and decent treatment. He nodded toward the cabins. Each family has their own home. The men work the cattle and horses. Some of the women help with the house or garden if they choose to. All are paid for their labor. As they approached, children raced from various directions, calling out excitedly, "Mr. Blake's back. Did you bring the teacher? Is that her?" Willow felt suddenly nervous as the wagon stopped, and small faces peered up at her with curiosity. Blake jumped down and helped her descend. "Everyone, this is Miss Hartford. She's agreed to be your teacher." A chorus of greetings and questions erupted. Willow recognized Rose's daughter Elena by her eager expression. "When do we start school, Miss Hartford? What will we learn first? Do you know about dinosaur bones?" Willow laughed, already warming to her new pupils. "We'll start tomorrow morning. And yes, we will certainly discuss dinosaur bones at some point." Blake directed 2 ranch hands to take Willow's trunks to her quarters, then led her into the main house. Unlike the ostentatious mansions of wealthy Easterners, the ranch house was built for function and comfort, sturdy furniture, practical arrangements, with touches of beauty in hand-woven rugs and local pottery. "This will be your room," he said, opening a door off the main hallway. The space was larger than her entire cabin in town, with a comfortable bed, dresser, washstand, and desk. Large windows offered views of the mountains and let in abundant light. "It's lovely," she said, genuinely pleased. "The schoolroom is in the converted bunkhouse behind the main house. It was fitted with desks and a blackboard last month." He lingered in the doorway. "Dinner is at 6. You'll meet the rest of the ranch hands and their families then." Willow spent the afternoon unpacking and organizing her teaching materials. The change had happened so quickly she scarcely had time to consider all its implications. Here she was, miles from town, in the home of a man she barely knew, about to teach children who might have never had formal education before. For the first time in years, she felt a flutter of genuine hope. Dinner was a lively affair. The long table in the ranch house dining room accommodated Blake, Willow, and the 5 family heads with their spouses. The children ate earlier, supervised by the older girls. Willow met the Mendez family, whom she already knew through Rosa, the O'Malleys, an Irish couple with 3 boisterous sons, the Russos, an Italian family with twin girls, the Garcias, who had 4 children ranging from toddler to teenager, and Mr. Jenkins, a widower whose young daughter lived with him at the ranch. Blake sat at the head of the table, occasionally joining conversations, but mostly observing with quiet satisfaction as his people interacted. Willow noticed how they respected him without fearing him, a rare quality in an employer. "Miss Hartford, Mrs. O'Malley said, passing a platter of roasted beef. "My Seamus can barely read, but he's quick with numbers. Will you help him?" "Of course," Willow assured her. "Every child learns differently." "And my Lucia and Sophia," Mr. Russo added. "They speak better English than me now, but their writing, it needs work." Throughout the meal, parents expressed hopes for their children's education, not just the basics, but aspirations for futures previously thought impossible. These were not the prejudiced, narrow-minded townsfolk Willow had grown accustomed to. These were people who understood struggle and valued opportunity. After dinner, Blake invited Willow to join him on the porch. The setting sun painted the mountains in fiery gold and deep purple, a sight so beautiful it momentarily stole her words. "Will you be comfortable here?" he asked, leaning against a post. "I believe so," she replied honestly. "Your people seem kind. They're good folks. Hard workers. Most came west for the same reasons we did, to build something of their own." He looked out over his land. "Everyone deserves that chance." Willow studied his profile in the fading light. "You're not what I expected, Mr. Callahan." He turned to her with a raised eyebrow. "What did you expect? The typical wealthy rancher, arrogant, authoritarian, concerned only with profit." "I care about profit," he admitted. "Can't run a ranch without it. But profit isn't worth much if it costs you your soul." He straightened. "Get some rest, Miss Hartford. Those children will run you ragged tomorrow if you're not prepared." His words proved prophetic. By midday of her first teaching day, Willow was exhausted but exhilarated. The children's abilities varied widely. Some could read well, others barely recognized letters, but all showed enthusiasm that made her heart swell. She established a routine quickly. Mornings were devoted to reading, writing, and arithmetic, afternoons to history, science, and art. On Fridays, she took the children outdoors for nature studies, exploring the ranch's diverse ecosystem. Blake occasionally observed her classes, standing quietly at the back of the room with an inscrutable expression. She tried not to feel self-conscious under his gaze, but couldn't help wondering what he thought of her methods. Weeks passed, and Willow found herself settling into life at Thunder Ridge. She took meals with Blake and whoever else was at the main house, spent evenings reading or preparing lessons, and slowly began to know the families beyond the classroom. One evening, about a month after her arrival, Blake invited her to ride with him to check on a new foal born the previous day. "I shouldn't," she demurred. "I have lessons to prepare." "The foal's mother had trouble," he explained. "I'd value your opinion on whether she's recovering properly." "I'm not a veterinarian, Mr. Callahan." "No, but you mentioned your father kept horses in Boston, and I've seen you studying my veterinary books in the evenings." Surprised he'd noticed, Willow agreed. They rode double on his gelding, her arms wrapped awkwardly around his waist, her body tense with the unfamiliar proximity. The mare and foal were in a small paddock near the far pasture. The foal, a spindly-legged chestnut with a white blaze, nursed vigorously while its mother stood protectively nearby. "She seems to be doing well," Willow observed, relaxing as she focused on the animals. "Good stance, alert eyes." "Is she eating properly?" "Started eating this morning," Blake confirmed. "I was concerned about infection, but there's no discharge or fever." Willow approached slowly, speaking softly to the mare. The horse's ears flicked forward, but she allowed Willow to stroke her neck. "She's lovely," Willow said. "What's her name?" "Duchess. And her foal is yet unnamed." He watched Willow with the horses. "You have a good hand with them." "I've always loved horses. My father taught me to ride when I was young." A wistful smile crossed her face. "He said I took to it like I was born in the saddle." "Would you like to ride more often? I could have a mount prepared for you in the mornings before school." The offer was tempting. "I wouldn't want to impose." "It's not an imposition. Horses need exercise, and you clearly know what you're doing." He leaned against the fence. "Besides, you should see more of the ranch than just the schoolhouse and main house." The next morning, Willow rose before dawn and found Blake waiting with two saddled horses, his gray gelding and a dappled mare. "This is Pepper," he introduced. "Gentle but spirited. I think you'll suit each other." They rode as the sun rose, casting long shadows across the landscape. Blake showed her Thunder Creek, which gave the ranch its name, and the ridge where he'd built a small cabin during his first year on the property. "I lived there alone for 2 years," he explained. "Just me and 3 horses, trying to prove I could make something of this land. It must have been lonely." "Peaceful," he corrected. "Though I admit, company is welcome now." He glanced at her then, a look that made her pulse quicken. Willow turned away, focusing on the scenery instead of the warmth spreading through her chest. Morning rides became a routine they both cherished. Blake spoke more freely during these times, telling stories of his early ranching days, his travels back east, his dreams for Thunder Ridge's future. Willow found herself sharing more of her own past, her childhood in Boston, her parents' encouragement of her education, her struggles after their deaths. "Why did you never marry?" he asked one morning as they watered their horses at the creek. The question startled her. "No one asked who I could accept," she answered honestly. "And I wasn't willing to sacrifice my independence for security." "Is that what marriage means to you? Sacrificing independence?" Willow considered this. "It seems to be what most men expect. A wife who obeys, who abandons her own thoughts and dreams." "That sounds more like acquiring property than building a partnership," Blake observed. "Precisely, and I refuse to be anyone's property." He nodded thoughtfully. "A reasonable position. And you, Mr. Callahan? Why have you remained unmarried?" A shadow crossed his face. "I was engaged once in Philadelphia. Elizabeth Harrington, daughter of my father's business partner." He ran a hand through his hair. "When I decided to come west, she refused to join me. Couldn't blame her. I was asking her to leave everything familiar for an uncertain future." "You didn't consider staying for her?" "I considered it." His expression grew distant. "But in the end, I knew I'd grow to resent her if I stayed." and she'd grow to resent me if she came. Better to part ways than build a life on resentment. Willow studied him with new understanding. That was remarkably self-aware. He shrugged. Just practical. Marriage should make both people better, not bitter. As summer progressed, Willow found herself increasingly drawn to Blake. It wasn't just his handsome features or his kindness to his workers. It was the way he listened when she spoke, considering her words rather than dismissing them. The way he respected her work with the children. The way he built a community where everyone contributed according to their abilities and was valued for it. One afternoon, Willow was reading under a cottonwood tree while her students enjoyed their midday break when Blake approached with a letter in hand. "This came for you," he said, handing her the envelope. From Boston. Willow recognized the handwriting immediately. "My aunt," she explained, breaking the seal. As she read, her expression darkened. "Bad news?" Blake asked, sitting beside her. "My cousin Thomas is getting married. Aunt Harriet suggests it's time I put aside my western adventure and return east, where she's found a suitable position as companion to an elderly widow." Willow's voice dripped with sarcasm. "Apparently, at 26, I'm rapidly approaching spinsterhood and should secure whatever modest position I can. Will you go?" The question hung in the air. Willow folded the letter carefully. "No, my life is here now." Relief flickered across Blake's face. "The children would miss you terribly." "Only the children?" The words slipped out before she could stop them. His eyes met hers, intense and unguarded. "No, not only the children." The moment stretched between them, taut with unspoken feelings. Then Elena's voice called from the schoolhouse, announcing it was time to resume lessons, and the moment passed. But something had shifted. In the days that followed, Willow caught Blake watching her more often during meals, while she taught, as she read in the evening. His gaze was never inappropriate, but it carried a warmth that made her increasingly aware of him not just as her employer, but as a man. In July, Blake announced a celebration for Independence Day. "The whole ranch will gather for a picnic by the creek," he explained over breakfast. "Games for the children, dancing in the evening. It's a tradition." "Sounds wonderful," Willow said, helping herself to more coffee. "I'll prepare some historical readings about the Declaration for the children." Blake chuckled. "Always the teacher. But perhaps for one day, you might just enjoy yourself without planning a lesson." The day of the celebration arrived hot and clear. Tables were set up beneath the trees along the creek, laden with food prepared by all the families. Children ran races and played games, their laughter echoing across the valley. Men competed in horseshoes and target shooting, while women shared recipes and stories. Willow wore her best dress of blue cotton with white trim that she'd saved for special occasions. She'd pinned her hair up but left a few curls loose around her face, a concession to vanity she rarely allowed herself. "Miss Hartford," Elena called, running up to her. "You look so pretty, like a picture in a book." Willow laughed. "Thank you, Elena. You look lovely yourself." "Mr. Blake said so too," the girl confided. "I heard him tell Mr. Mendez that you look beautiful today." Heat rushed to Willow's cheeks. "Elena, it's not polite to repeat private conversations. But it's true." The girl tugged her hand. "Come see what we made." The children had constructed a makeshift stage from crates and were planning to perform patriotic recitations they'd practiced in school. Willow helped organize them, grateful for the distraction from thoughts of Blake and his reported comment. As the sun began to set, fiddles and guitars emerged. Tables were moved aside to create a dance area, and lanterns were hung from tree branches, casting a golden glow over the gathering. Willow sat with Rosa, watching the first couples take to the floor. "You should dance, Miss Hartford," Rosa encouraged. "It is a celebration, no?" "Perhaps later," Willow demurred, though she loved dancing and hadn't had the opportunity in years. Her resolve lasted until Blake appeared before her, hand extended. "May I have this dance, Miss Hartford?" His eyes held that same warmth she'd grown accustomed to, now amplified by the lantern light and the festive atmosphere. She hesitated only briefly before placing her hand in his. "You may, Mr. Callahan." He led her to the center of the dancing area, placing one hand respectfully at her waist while holding her other hand in his. The music was a simple waltz, and Blake moved with surprising grace for a man who spent his days on horseback. "You dance well," she observed. My mother insisted I learn. Said no gentleman could be considered properly educated without knowing how to waltz. His smile was rueful. I complained bitterly at the time, but I'm grateful now. As am I, Willow replied, then blushed at her own boldness. Blake's hand tightened slightly at her waist. You look beautiful tonight, Willow. It was the first time he'd used her given name, and the intimacy of it sent a shiver through her. Thank you, Blake. They danced in silence after that, the music and the movement saying what words could not. Willow was acutely aware of his nearness, the strength in his arms, the clean scent of soap and leather that surrounded him. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine what it might be like to belong with someone without losing herself. When the music ended, Blake didn't immediately release her. Would you walk with me? He asked quietly. There's something I'd like to show you. Heart pounding, Willow nodded. He led her away from the gathering, following a path that wound along the creek. The sounds of music and laughter faded behind them as they walked in companionable silence, the only light coming from the rising moon and the stars overhead. After several minutes, they reached a small clearing where the creek widened into a natural pool. Moonlight reflected off the water's surface, and fireflies danced among the reeds. I found this place my first week on the ranch, Blake said. I come here when I need to think. It's magical, Willow breathed, watching the fireflies blink like earthbound stars. Willow, Blake turned to face her, his expression serious in the moonlight. These past months, having you here, it's changed things. Changed what? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Everything. He took her hands in his. I built this ranch, this life, thinking it was enough. But since you arrived, I've realized what was missing. Willow's heart raced. Blake, let me finish, please. He took a deep breath. That day in the general store, when they said no man would take a woman like you, I wanted to tell them they were fools. A woman with your courage, your intelligence, your heart, any man would be blessed to have you choose him. Tears pricked at Willow's eyes. Most men don't see it that way. I'm not most men. He released one of her hands to gently touch her cheek. I don't want someone who will merely obey me or agree with everything I say. I want a partner who challenges me, who makes me think, who helps me be better than I am alone. What are you saying, Blake? I'm saying I'm falling in love with you, Willow Hartford. And I'm hoping you might consider falling in love with me too. The confession hung in the air between them, honest and vulnerable. Willow's thoughts raced. She had come to care deeply for Blake, had even admitted to herself that what she felt might be love, but fear still lingered. I've spent so long protecting my independence, she said softly. I'm not sure I know how to share my life with someone. Independence doesn't have to mean isolation. Blake's thumb traced her cheekbone gently. What if we built something together, equal partners, each bringing our strengths, supporting each other's dreams? Is that possible? She asked, wanting desperately to believe it. I don't know, he admitted, but I'd like to try, if you would. In that moment, looking into his honest eyes, Willow made her choice. She leaned forward and pressed her lips to his, her first kiss freely given, her first step toward a future she hadn't dared imagine. Blake's arms encircled her, drawing her closer as he returned the kiss with gentle passion. When they finally parted, both were breathless. Is that a yes? He asked, smiling against her lips. Willow laughed softly. It's a I'm willing to try. That's all I ask. He kissed her forehead. We should return before people start to wonder where we've gone. They walked back hand in hand, rejoining the celebration as the fireworks began. If anyone noticed their linked hands or the new light in their eyes, no one commented directly, though Rosa shot Willow a knowing smile, and Mr. O'Malley clapped Blake on the shoulder with a wink. The following weeks were a time of discovery. Blake and Willow continued their morning rides, now often ending with stolen kisses beneath the shade of a mesquite tree. They shared meals and conversations, learning the contours of each other's minds and hearts. Blake revealed his hopes for expanding the ranch, not just in size, but in purpose, breeding finer horses, experimenting with sustainable farming techniques, perhaps even establishing a small town center where the ranch families could build a true community. Willow shared her dreams of a proper school building, with a library where children and adults alike could continue their education. She spoke of teaching methods she'd studied but never been allowed to implement, of her belief that education was the key to a more just society. Together, they began to envision a future that combined both their dreams. The summer passed in a sweet haze of work and growing love. Willow continued teaching, Blake managed the ranch, and in their free moments, they built a relationship based on mutual respect and deepening affection. One evening in late August, as they sat on the porch watching a thunderstorm roll across the distant mountains, Blake took Willow's hand. "I have to go to Tucson next week," he said. "Cattle auction and supply run. I'll be gone about 10 days. "I'll miss you," she replied simply. He squeezed her hand. "Come with me." Willow hesitated. "What about my classes? The children could use a short break. And I." He looked uncharacteristically nervous. "I'd like you to meet someone while we're there." "Who?" "Judge Wilson. He's an old friend." Blake cleared his throat. "And he's authorized to perform marriages." Willow's breath caught. "Blake Callahan, is that a proposal?" He turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. "Not the one you deserve, perhaps." He slid from the chair to one knee before her. "Willow Hartford, these past months have shown me what it means to truly love someone, not to possess them, but to cherish who they are, to support what they believe in, to build something meaningful together." Tears filled Willow's eyes as he continued. "I love your fierce intelligence, your unwavering principles, your gentle heart that you protect so carefully. I love watching you teach, seeing how you inspire those children to believe in possibilities they never imagined." His voice grew husky with emotion. "I want to spend my life with you as your husband, your partner, your friend. Will you marry me?" The answer formed easily on Willow's lips. "Yes." Joy illuminated Blake's face as he rose and pulled her into his arms, sealing their promise with a kiss that spoke of future happiness. They were married in Tucson the following week, a simple ceremony with Judge Wilson officiating and 2 strangers as witnesses. Willow wore a new dress of pale green silk that Blake had surprised her with, and Blake wore his best suit. Their vows were traditional in form, but revolutionary in spirit, promises of partnership, respect, and enduring love. When they returned to Thunder Ridge, the entire ranch had prepared a celebration to rival the Independence Day gathering. A feast was laid out, music played, and everyone from the youngest child to the oldest ranch hand came to congratulate them. "They love you," Blake whispered as they accepted yet another handmade gift from one of the families. "Almost as much as I do." "They love us," Willow corrected. "What we're building together." That night, in the privacy of what was now their shared bedroom, Blake and Willow discovered the physical expression of their love, tender, passionate, and transformative. For Willow, who had guarded her independence so fiercely, giving herself to Blake completely was not a surrender, but a triumph, the final proof that love could exist without domination, that 2 people could come together as equals in every way. As autumn painted the landscape in gold and crimson, Willow and Blake settled into married life with surprising ease. They worked together during the day, she teaching the growing number of children as word of Thunder Ridge's school spread, he managing the expanding ranch operations, and spent evenings planning their shared future. The construction of a proper schoolhouse began, with Blake insisting on large windows to capture the natural light Willow loved. Next to it, a small library took shape, built from Blake's extensive book collection and new volumes ordered from back east. Willow occasionally accompanied Blake to Redemption Creek for supplies, holding her head high as townsfolk who had once scorned her now looked on in disbelief at her transformation from outcast to respected rancher's wife. Mrs. Peterson nearly dropped her shopping basket the first time Blake publicly introduced Willow as "my wife" in the general store. "Never thought I'd see the day," Mr. Simmons muttered, not quite under his breath. "That makes 2 of us," Willow replied with a serene smile, her hand comfortably in Blake's. Jack Miller, the miner who had shot her, avoided them entirely, crossing to the other side of the street whenever they appeared. Blake had apparently had a private conversation with him during one of his trips to town alone, a conversation that left Miller pale and apologetic whenever Willow's name was mentioned. In November, as the first cool winds heralded the approach of winter, Willow made a discovery that filled her with both excitement and trepidation. She waited until they were alone after dinner, sitting before the fireplace in their cozy parlor, to share the news. "Blake," she began, setting aside her book. I need to tell you something. He looked up from his ledgers, immediately attentive to the serious note in her voice. What is it, love? I'm going to have a baby. Blake's expression transformed from concern to wonder in an instant. A baby? You're certain? Willow nodded, a smile breaking through her nervousness. Dr. Samuelson confirmed it when we were in town yesterday. He estimates the baby will arrive in early summer. Blake was on his knees before her in a moment, his hands gently cradling her still flat stomach. A child, he whispered, awe in his voice. Our child. Are you happy? She asked, needing to hear the words. Happy doesn't begin to describe it. He looked up at her, eyes shining. Willow, you've given me more joy than I ever thought possible, and now this a family of our own. His unbridled happiness eased her fears. I was worried, she admitted. About continuing to teach, about whether I'd be a good mother. You'll be an extraordinary mother, Blake interrupted firmly. And of course you'll continue teaching, for as long as you wish to. We'll figure out the details together. True to his word, Blake supported Willow throughout her pregnancy. When morning sickness made early rising difficult, he adjusted their schedule. When her advancing condition made standing all day uncomfortable, he built her a special teaching chair with back support. When her energy flagged in the late afternoons, he arranged for Rose's oldest daughter to assist with the younger children. The ranch families embraced the news of the coming baby with enthusiasm, showering Willow with advice, home remedies for pregnancy discomforts, and handmade gifts for the nursery. Elena appointed herself special assistant to Mrs. Callahan, fetching books and supplies so Willow wouldn't have to. As winter gave way to spring, Willow's body changed, her stomach rounding with new life. Blake found her more beautiful than ever, often placing his hands on her growing belly to feel the baby's movements, his expression one of perpetual amazement. What shall we name him? He asked one evening as they lay in bed, his hand resting protectively over their child. Him? You're so certain it's a boy, Willow teased. Just a feeling, Blake said. Though a daughter with your spirit would be equally wonderful. Willow considered names they discussed. If it's a boy, perhaps William, after my father. William Callahan. Blake tested the name. Strong. Dignified. I like it. And if it's a girl, Willow continued. I thought perhaps Catherine, after your mother. Blake's eyes softened. She would have loved you, you know. She always said I needed someone who wouldn't let me have my way all the time. Willow laughed. Then she was very wise indeed. As her due date approached, Willow reluctantly agreed to end the school term early. The new schoolhouse was complete, the library stocked and organized, ready for classes to resume in the fall. On a warm June morning, with sunlight streaming through the bedroom windows, Willow's labor began. Blake sent for the midwife, Mrs. Garcia, who had delivered all 4 of her own children and most of the other children on the ranch. The hours that followed tested Willow's strength and Blake's composure. He refused to leave her side despite Mrs. Garcia's initial protests, holding Willow's hand through each contraction, wiping her brow, and murmuring encouragement. You're the strongest person I know, he told her as the labor intensified. You can do this, my love. After 18 hours, as the sun rose on a new day, their daughter entered the world with a lusty cry that brought tears to both parents' eyes. She has your determination, Blake said as he gazed down at the red-faced infant in Willow's arms. And your beauty. Catherine, Willow whispered, stroking the downy dark hair that already showed signs of Blake's curls. Welcome to the world, little one. The first months of Catherine's life brought new challenges and deeper joy than either Blake or Willow had anticipated. Sleepless nights gave way to mornings of discovery as their daughter grew and changed, her personality emerging day by day, curious like her mother, steadfast like her father, and fiercely independent in ways that were entirely her own. By autumn, Willow had resumed teaching, with Catherine either sleeping in a cradle in the corner of the schoolhouse or being cared for by Rosa when she needed more attention. The arrangement worked better than Willow had dared hope, allowing her to continue the work she loved while embracing motherhood fully. Blake expanded the ranch's operations, breeding horses that gained renown throughout the territory and beyond. Thunder Ridge prospered, allowing him to hire more workers and improve conditions for everyone who lived there. Together, They built not just a successful business, but a community one where children received education regardless of gender or background, where work was valued and fairly compensated, where dignity and respect were foundation stones rather than afterthoughts. On Catherine's first birthday, as family and ranch workers gathered to celebrate, Blake pulled Willow aside for a private moment. "I have something for you," he said, leading her to their bedroom. On the bed lay a long, narrow package wrapped in brown paper. Willow unwrapped it to find a hand-carved wooden sign. The lettering, burned into the wood with careful precision, read, "Hartford Callahan School, where all minds are welcome." Tears filled Willow's eyes as she traced the letters. "Blake, it's perfect. I thought it was time the school had a proper name," he said, his arm around her waist. "One that honors what you've built here." "What we've built," she corrected, leaning into his embrace. "I couldn't have done any of this without you. Nor I without you." He kissed her temple. "Remember that day in the general store? When they said no man would take a woman like you?" Willow smiled at the memory. "And you said you'd take me. Best decision I ever made." His eyes held hers, filled with the same warmth and respect that had first drawn her to him. "I'd take you twice over, Willow Hartford Callahan. Every single day for the rest of our lives." "And I you," she whispered, sealing the promise with a kiss. Outside, the celebration continued. Catherine toddled among her admirers, soaking up attention. The schoolhouse stood ready for another term of learning. Horses grazed in distant pastures, cattle fattened on summer grass, and the creek bubbled its endless song. As the sun began to set, painting the mountains in gold and shadow, Willow and Blake rejoined their guests, hand in hand. They had found in each other not completion but amplification, each made stronger, more whole, more truly themselves through their union. They were living proof that love could exist without dominance, that partnership could flourish without subjugation, that a woman deemed too independent, too educated, too strong could find not just a man who would take her, but one who would cherish her precisely for those qualities others feared. Thunder Ridge Ranch continued to thrive in the years that followed. Catherine was joined by a brother, William, 2 years later, and the two Callahan children grew up surrounded by books, horses, and an extended family of ranch workers who doted on them. The school expanded as more families settled in the area, drawn by stories of fair wages and educational opportunities. Willow eventually hired 2 additional teachers to help with the growing student body, but she never stopped teaching herself, finding continued purpose in opening young minds to possibilities. Blake's innovations in ranching and horse breeding brought both prosperity and respect. When a railroad spur line was proposed for the region, Thunder Ridge became a natural hub for the new development, transforming the ranch into the center of a growing community. And through it all, Blake and Willow remained partners in the truest sense, supporting each other's dreams, challenging each other's thinking, and loving each other with a depth that only grew with passing years. On their 10th wedding anniversary, as they stood on the porch of their home, watching their children play with the ranch dogs, Blake wrapped his arm around Willow's waist. "Do you ever think about that day in Redemption Creek?" he asked. "When you got shot for defending that young waitress?" "Occasionally," Willow admitted. "It seems like another lifetime. If you hadn't stood up for her, if Miller hadn't shot you, if I hadn't come to town that particular day." Blake shook his head. "So many chances for us never to have met." Willow leaned into his embrace. "I prefer to think it was inevitable, that somehow, some way, we would have found each other. The schoolteacher too stubborn to back down, and the rancher too stubborn to let her go." Blake chuckled. "Perhaps you're right." In the distance, Catherine called to her brother, her voice carrying across the yard that had once been empty land. William's laughter followed, bright and clear in the afternoon air. Inside the house, preparations for their anniversary celebration continued, a gathering of friends and family that would last well into the evening. "I love you, Blake Callahan," Willow said simply, turning in his arms to face him. "Thank you for seeing me when others looked away." "I love you, Willow Hartford Callahan," he replied, his eyes crinkling at the corners in the way she had always found endearing. "Thank you for being exactly who you are twice over, and then some." Their lips met in a kiss that held a decade of memories and promised decades more, a testament to the enduring power of love built on respect, partnership, and the courage to see beyond convention to the heart that beats beneath. And as the sun began its descent toward the distant mountains, painting Thunder Ridge in gold and shadow, they stood together not as two halves of a whole, but as two wholes who had chosen to build something greater together than either could have created alone.